Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. It's time now for your business news. Melissa Tighy is standing by from the eNCA Money Desk. And Melissa, of course, a very important 2 days with AGOA kicking off today.
Yes, we had the medium-term budget policy statement yesterday. Today we have AGOA. So I'm going to try to do a bit of a combination of the two stories today because they are equally important. So firstly, there were no big surprises in the medium-term budget policy statement yesterday, but the question remains if it will instill investor confidence in South Africa. Now, meanwhile, the 20th AGOA Private Sector Forum kicked off today at Nasrec in Johannesburg, and one of the talking points will be the importance of the private sector in driving the trade deal. Now, for more on both of these topics, we speak to the lead economist at KPMG, Frank Blackmore. Frank, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Attracting investors is key to economic growth in South Africa. Do you think the medium-term budget policy statement succeeded to instill some confidence?
I don't think so. And my reasoning is as follows. We've gone through a large number of years where we've lost credibility regarding the fiscal management or the management of the fiscus. And we know this because over this period we have had several sovereign debt downgrades, which meant that, the riskiness of the economy has gone up based on the fact on how we were managing our fiscus. And even recently, if we compare sort of our economic state that took place when the February budget came out, the main budget, compared to now, we've had a further deterioration, telling us that international investors are wary of specifically our sort of fiscal situation that we find ourselves in. I think the difficulty with respect to the budget is, although yesterday's budget contained a lot of, let's call it, positive statements of intent, in other words, cutting expenditure, investing in the economy, trying to grow the economy. So the right words were said. We know that as far as our record is concerned, we don't act. So the behavior, the actions are not in line with those intents. And when we get up the road to the next budget presentation, then we see the slippage on the fiscal front. And I think it will take one or two good budgets where we actually do what we say or better, in order for the international investors to take note and to start believing that we've got our fiscal house in order.
Now, to the AGOA Forum taking place in Johannesburg, where investor confidence is also just important and also a big talking point, how important is the continuation of this agreement for South Africa?
It's massively important. Our trade with the US is something like 270 billion rands. 60 billion of that is under the AGOA Act. Remember, this is not a trade agreement between the economies. It's an act under which we get sort of access to their markets without paying, duties on that access. And therefore, it's massively important. Even if, our foreign policy, etc., changes over time, it's important to diversify who our trade partners are so that when one part of the world is going through maybe tough times, it can be balanced out by other parts of the world that may be having better times. So I think it's vital for us to keep this going.
Now, today the focus at the forum is the private sector. Do you think it all comes down to the private sector to boost projects and economic growth in South Africa?
It's not all down to the private sector. Remember, I think a lot of what we've been speaking about over recent times is that we need to create an environment that's conducive for the private sector to thrive, and that's been missing. If you don't have power, if you don't have logistics, if you have restrictive policies or a lot of uncertainty, there's going to be no investment, no matter what the will of the private sector. But at the end of the day, trade is also B2B. In other words, businesses here trading with businesses there. It's not as if the government is involved in that trade. They only facilitate the sort of environment in which that takes place. So you need both actors, but the private sector for sure should be pushing the agenda.
Thank you for your insights, Frank. That was the lead economist at KPMG, Frank Blackmore.